Hello everybody, Maven here, and the Act 3 patch has finally went live at Tuesday reset, and there's a few notable changes, but the most massive one is probably the buff to lightweight pulse rifles. The patch notes are as follows: increase the body shot damage from 17 to 20.4, and increase the critical damage from 31.45 to 31.6. The crit damage didn't get much of a shift, but the body shot damage shift is massive, mate. That buff hugely increased the consistency of this archetype in PvP, and now they're actually really good. So that begs the question, what is the best lightweight pulse rifle in the game? Who is the king? Is it the Outbreak Perfected, probably the most popular and accessible choice? Is it the Stay Frosty, probably the most anticipated? Is it the BXR Battler, undoubtedly the best in the energy slot? Or is it the bad Juju, the underdog? Well, I took all of them for a spin in Iron Banner this week, and I'll let you know my findings, so let's break it down. Hope you enjoy. This video is sponsored by Advanced GG, the only clinically proven gaming supplement shown to improve your gaming performance. Use code MAVEN at checkout for 10% off your order, link down below. Thank you. So let's start by heading into a private match and testing out the new buff. Here are the pre-buff TTK values. At tier 10 resilience, it took 7 crits and 1 body shot to pick up the kill, and after the buff, as you can see here, it took 6 crits and 1 body shot, but that must have been a visual bug. I can almost guarantee that it took 6 crits and 2 body shots. So the TTK remains the same, but it's just a slight bit more forgiving. But the real winner here is the increased body shot damage, which went up by a whopping 4.4 damage overall. Previously, it took 14 body shots to pick up the kill at 1.67 TTK, and after the buff, it only takes 12 body shots to kill, which is a 1.33 TTK. That's 0.34 faster than before, which is a gigantic shift for a buff to issue, and this is the new fastest body shot TTK among all pulse rifle archetypes. And you want to know something funny? High impact pulse rifles, which were the previous meta, got hit with some beefy nerfs, and their body shot damage went down to 21.5. And remember, our lightweight frames do 20.4. That's only a 1.1 damage difference between an 110 RPM difference, which is huge. So as you can see here, it takes 11 shots to kill with body shots from a 340 pulse, while it takes 12 from a 450 pulse. Massive RPM difference for a 4 burst either way. It's a 9-day difference. Lightweights are by far the new most forgiving pulse archetype, especially in hectic spray and pray situations or when crouch spamming like I do half the time. But what if we utilize perks such as Head Seeker or Kill Clip? The Stay Frosty and the BXR Battler can get Kill Clip, and the Stay Frosty and the Outbreak Perfected can get Head Seeker, and the bad Juju has its own exotic perk, the String of Curses, so let's see them in action. Starting off with Kill Clip, and it does allow us to pick up the 2 bursts, giving us a mega unfair 0.53 TTK, which is extremely competitive and hard to beat. And after the body shot damage buff, it comes extremely close to picking up that 3 burst body shot kill. It's like they had a focus sash, but unfortunately, it's a 10 tap at a 1.2 TTK, which is still good. But if you did use a Chattering Bone, it could be a 3 tap since it does roll with Kill Clip and Rampage. But on my Chattering Bone here, I have Kinetic Tremors, and when you enhance this perk, it allows you to proc it in 10 shots. So as you can see here, in theory, the Chattering Bone can pick up that same 10 tap to the body as Kill Clip did, except without requiring any perk activations because it just does it automatically. And in a way, the Chattering Bone could technically have the most theoretical range out of any lightweight pulse, since the Kinetic Tremors proc doesn't have damage fall off. Where it procs, and it's always going to do the same amount of damage. So it might be worth giving the Chattering Bone a go to see if it might be the secret sauce, but unfortunately I didn't try it yet. But I digress. Now let's move on to Head Seeker to see how that does. And this one's kind of hard to test, but I just wanted to see if it would require 1 less headshot to pick up an optimal TTK. And it turns out it was pretty tough to test. I couldn't really gauge it properly, but if you want to look at my footage and dissect it for yourself, by all means go ahead. It increases your headshot damage by 2, and it seems as though it's always going to be a 3 burst regardless, and I could be wrong, but I think it does allow 1 less crit. So if you wanted to build into consistency and forgiveness, then Head Seeker might be the way to go. Next, let's try the String of Curses on the bad Juju, a buff that lasts a very generous amount of time and does not require reloading to activate, and unfortunately it didn't pick up the 2 burst, but it does seem to be able to kill in 6 crits in 1 body, equating to a 0.8 TTK flat. And to the body, it made us just need one less shot, so it was an 11 tap at a 1.27 TTK. So it's not the most insane damage buff in the world, but it can keep on ramping up like Swashbuckler and max out at a ridiculous 52% damage buff, but I'm not testing that here because that realistically won't happen. But before moving on, the Bat Juju also happens to have a hidden perk that makes targets explode. It doesn't say it anywhere on the weapon because it is a hidden perk, and it did 138 damage to a nearby Guardian. Not the craziest perk ever, but definitely a lot better than something like Dragonfly. But we do have one more perk to try out, and that's Gutshot Straight on the BXR Battler. I know this perk may not be everyone's cup of tea, but hear me out. Seeing as how these pulses got a massive body shot damage buff, Gutshot should technically have more of an impact, so I just wanted to see how much it shifted our TTK. And that brings our body shot TTK to require one less shot, needing 11 shots to kill for a 1.27 TTK. Not the outcome I wanted, I expected more. Now after all we tested, Headseeker is just okay. String of Curses is kind of just there without a choice, and Gutshot is pretty niche, but above all, Kill Clip is the clear winner, and what I would personally say is the strongest damage perk on these things. So what's stopping me from crowning our legendary options as the clear winners? Well, we have to take into account that some of these exotics have some tricks up their sleeves. The Bat Juju never has to reload. It says right here, kills refill the magazine, and then on the Outbreak Perfected, precision kills create these swarms of Siva nanites, and they're basically like swarm grenades. They have an enormous radius and they do pretty decent damage. Additionally, you do some juicy increased damage to targets that have Siva nanites attached to them. And I'm talking like nearly double the damage. As you can see here, it brings our body shot damage up to 36, nearly allowing us to one burst to the body. And to the crit, it brings our damage up to a whopping 56. That's 168 damage with one burst. So this weapon can be pretty nasty for multi-kills. And you PvE players may know that sustained damage on a target plants Siva nanites on them and increases your damage. So I tested with body shots to see if that worked in PvP, and sadly it does not. It's going to take a lot more shots than that to proc it. And one extra thing to take into account about the Outbreak Perfected is that its recoil is coded pretty uniquely. This thing is an absolute laser beam. I have 100 recoil on mine, and the stability stat barely means a thing on this weapon. It feels like no matter what, this thing barely moves. It doesn't shake. It's probably the smoothest feeling pulse in the entire game. It's by far the easiest to control, that's for sure. And on the other hand, I'm going to test out this Stay Frosty right here, and when you tack on the Ombalon Fluid Dynamics Origin Tray, this thing has 100 stability. And it somehow kicks around more than the Outbreak Perfected, which had half the stability that this thing has. And while the Stay Frosty may be a beast at going on streaks with Kill Clip, I've noticed with the circle reticle it has and the slightly extra added kick, it's kind of tough to be accurate with it from like 40 plus meters, and that's not really an issue for the Outbreak Perfected. But that brings us to the final thing we need to talk about, and that's obviously stats, and most importantly range, probably the most important thing when it comes to Crucible weapons. And as you can see here, when I compare the Stay Frosty versus the Outbreak Perfected, it's a night and day difference. And mind you, this isn't even taking into account that the Ombalon Fluid Dynamics also adds on an extra 20 stability and 30 reload speed, so it's even more of a stat monster. Now this is the Godroll Outbreak that I would recommend. I got Fluted Barrel for the plus 15 handling because I don't want it to be so slow, because for some reason it has below average handling. And I got Accurized Rounds for plus 10 range and then Fitted Stock to max out its recoil direction. And we're sitting at 54 range, which is not the best. That's only 34 meters of range. You can get 2 extra meters if you ran full bore instead of Fluted Barrel, but then your handling would greatly suffer. But then if we take a look at my BXR Battler, this is my roll, but in theory if you put on full bore, Accurized, and ran a ballistics mod, you can reach 91 range, which is 38.8 meters. That's nearly 5 more meters than my Outbreak roll. But in my ideal Battler roll here, we're sitting at 36.3 meters, which is 2.3 higher than my Outbreak. So while Outbreak may be the best feeling pulse by far, it's definitely the worst when it comes to stats. Now finally, on to some gameplay clips while I share my thoughts on who is the king of lightweight pulses. In the gameplay, you'll see a mixture of all 4 pulses I just did various games swapping between each one. Now for me personally, the BXR Battler is off the table, and I'll tell you why. It's because the Zealot's Reward is my main special. It's the best fusion in the game, don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I have over 4,000 kills on it. It's my baby, I can't live without it. So that would mean I'd have to run a primary in my kinetic slot. Now this is definitely a me problem, not a you problem, but I will say that the BXR Battler is an extremely good feeling weapon. This thing is a beast. It's extremely beginner friendly, it's very easy to aim with, and it's just genuinely solid. It may not be the most optimal weapon at a high level though, since it can sort of keep you tunnel visioned through a scope sometimes. It doesn't have that field of view like a normal primary, but that's not too big of an issue. I'm kind of nitpicking here. And one more benefit of the Battler is that it's a stat monster, as we just went over. This thing has above average base stats, and it's unarguably the best in the energy slot because nothing really contests it. But when it comes to the kinetic slot, things get a bit more interesting since there are a lot more things competing against each other. The next pulse is the Bad Juju. Now when it comes to 6v6, the Bad Juju is arguably the best because of its perk that auto-reloads it when you get a final blow, and it's surprising how much that can come in handy. And I'll show you a clip right here at the very start of a game I had on Distant Shore. I'll just let it play out from the moment the game starts to when I die, no cutting. And in this clip, I was using the Outbreak Perfected, and it was going fairly well. It was in the Eruption game mode where you're supposed to go on streaks, and once you're on a 5 streak, the entire enemy team has wall hacks on you, so it becomes much more difficult. And I managed to catch a few people off guard and get a few nice Outbreak kills, and I was on a 6 streak. You can even see me crouch spamming there for that 6th kill, but I threw a healing nade too quick and disrupted my reload animation. And you'll see that when I die, it was because my dang pulse rifle ran out of bullets. And as it happened, my very first thought was, man, if I was using the Bad Juju, I would have kept this streak going. There were 2 guardians in that doorway at the end, and if I had Bad Juju, I would have shredded through them at that point with 4 stacks of String of Curses, and my damage buff would have been huge at that point. I would have been 2-tapping people, but since I wasn't using Bad Juju, reloading becomes a roadblock and my streak ended. So this is why the Bad Juju can be the king of lightweight pulses for 6v6, but on small to medium maps, because its biggest hindrance is by far its range stat. That's the one thing it really lacks in. It only has 40 range, which is absolutely pathetic, whereas my Stay Frosty has 69 range, which is nice. But that's the hit you gotta take in exchange for the ability that allows you to mow through guardians like trash mobs in PvE. But in order to crown a king, we need a pulse that can shine in both 3v3 and 6v6. And now that's between the Outbreak Perfected and the Stay Frosty. And let's not beat around the bush, y'all. You saw the stat comparison earlier. The Stay Frosty is a stat monster and nearly doubles the Outbreak in every aspect. Plus it has more perk options, including the best perk kill clip. And the Outbreak has 70 aim assist, but the Stay Frosty with Enhanced Lone Wolf has 92 aim assist. And with the theoretical highest range stat for both of these weapons, the Stay Frosty has 1.2 more meters while having far greater handling. But you can have nearly 6 more meters if you have the perk Killing Wind. And if your argument is that kill clip is more of a 6v6 perk, this weapon actually has some neutral game perks in that column as well for 3v3, such as Head Seeker for consistency, as well as Headstone, which can be annoying in trials to block revives because it creates that crystal where their res is. So the opponent will be forced to break that crystal first before getting the revive. Plus, as icing on the cake, this weapon isn't taking up the exotic slot. So right now it's looking grim for the Outbreak Perfected, since the Stay Frosty seems to win in every possible aspect except one, and that's something we talked about earlier, and that's feel. There's no weapon that feels easier to shoot in the entire game than the Outbreak Perfected. It's quite possibly the single most stable gun in the entire game. And if you have the ornament I'm using with the red dot reticle, it makes it even easier to land your shots with this thing. So if there's one thing that the Outbreak wins at, it's accuracy and ease of use. But I would say it wins in the 3v3 department as well, since crit kills create those lingering swarms of Siva nanites at the target's location. And that, in my opinion, is better than a Headstone Crystal. It's going to make it really annoying for those teams that like to hold hands, and can help you get some easy cleanups after getting a pick because of the radius of the nanites are massive. So who is the king of lightweight pulses? Well, I'm sorry for those who wanted a definitive answer, because there are 4 kings. The Outbreak Perfected is the king of 3v3. The Stay Frosty and the BXR are the kings of 6v6 on bigger maps, and the Bad Juju is the king of 6v6 on smaller maps. They all have their strong suits, they all have a purpose. So that's my answer. Sorry if it was underwhelming. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and let me know which pulse you'll be using. Now, I did want to give a couple honorable mentions first to the Nightshade for having a great god roll with keep away and kill clip and a very nice reticle, albeit with less stability than the Stay Frosty, which is a very important stat on faster firing pulses. And the second honorable mention goes to the Chattering Bone for having access to some nutty perks, but also kind of requiring you to run a Void Super because of the Elemental Capacitor. Otherwise, the stability kind of suffers. Now, maybe this whole stability thing is just a skill issue on my part, because I do consider myself a slightly below average skill player, but if you have no trouble controlling the Chattering Bone with 60 or less stability, then more power to you, and it may even be your king of lightweight pulses for 6v6 with kill clip and rampage. But anyways, you heard my opinion, so which pulse will I be using personally? Well, to be completely honest with you, I still don't know. I'm still jumping back and forth between them all, but I'm just letting you know right now, the day we get a good rapid fire fusion in the kinetic slot for PvP, then the Battler will definitively be my main. But for the time being, since the Zealot's reward is a staple on my loadout, I'm left with all these great options that I can swap between depending on the map. There's a good reason to pick any one of them. They all have something to argue for, so I expect this comment section to be very divided. Now, for the unbelievers out there who are questioning the validity of lightweight pulses and want to know if they're even good, I'm going to say yes. I believe they have always been an extremely slept on archetype, and this is the buff they needed for them to finally come out of the woodworks, so expect to see more people using these. And I'm going to make a prediction right now that the next time Trials returns, we will see the Outbreak Perfected in the top 10 weapons used that weekend. That is my prediction. And something that's become somewhat of a tradition in my PvP videos is at the end, I like to show the end screens of the games we had in the background gameplay. Not to gloat about my skill, because like I said earlier, I consider myself to be a below average skilled player. I'm not that good, but it's just to show how good lightweight pulses are in the hands of a painfully average player like me. And I was able to top frag almost every single lobby I was in. I think I played around 15 to 20-ish games since Tuesday Reset, and I've top fragged like maybe 80% of those games. So if you are wondering if lightweight pulses are any good, then this is your proof, and that is going to do it for the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it has helped. If it did, then maybe you can help me out by simply hitting the like button. And if you're new here, possibly consider subscribing. If you are new, would love to have you here for more content on the way. And remember to check out our sponsor, Advanced GG, code Maven at checkout for 10% off your order, link down below. And I will catch you in the next video. See you later.